Nobody predicted that it would alter its path. Certainly not in a manner such as this. For many long months, the scientific community had characterized 3I Atlas as nothing more than a harmless visitor. They called it an interstellar rock that was simply journeying through our solar system. It was viewed as a ghost from a distant star, traveling on a trajectory that was supposed to carry it back out into the darkness of deep space. However, tonight, the situation has fundamentally changed. It began subtly at first, with a shift in its velocity, a fractional curve in its established trajectory, and then it became unmistakable. 3I Atlas is no longer departing, it is turning. And according to the most recent data retrieved from deep space, that turn is pointed directly toward us. It commenced with a mere flicker in the solar observatory feed at NASA, exactly the kind of technical glitch that they would typically choose to disregard. However, the timestamps did not align across 3 separate instruments: SOHO, stereo, and a ground-based array located in Chile. The identical anomaly manifested at the exact same moment. A thin, curling plume was seen extending from 3I Atlas, followed immediately by a sudden acceleration that defied every known model. That plume was not composed of gas or dust. It was far too organized for that. It was a perfect spiral that widened before folding back into itself. The mathematics simply do not work. Nothing in our understanding of physics should behave in that specific way near a gravitational body. And yet, there it was. A signature of motion that no natural object should ever produce. If you are new to this channel, welcome. And if you enjoy this journey through the strangest mystery currently in the sky, please hit that like button and subscribe. Because the narrative of 3I Atlas is not just about astronomy anymore. It is about us and what might be waiting out there for us. Also, please let us know in the comments section where you are watching from and at what time you started this video. Because tonight, you will want to remember exactly when you heard this. In the past 48 hours, every major observatory, from the European Space Agency's Solar Orbiter to Japan's Hinode mission, has turned its instruments toward the inner orbit of the Sun, tracking 3I Atlas as it passed through its closest approach. What they discovered did not make any sense. Instead of fading away as it moved behind the Sun, the object brightened fourfold. It was not merely reflecting light, it was emitting it. Scientists describe this specific type of emission as coherent, meaning the light was not scattered like that of a comet tail, but aligned and structured, as if modulated by intelligent design. Then, something else occurred. For the very first time since it entered our solar system, 3I Atlas transmitted radio interference strong enough to distort signals across multiple deep space networks. Initially, they believed it was solar noise, but when astronomers at the Canberra Deep Space Complex filtered the frequencies, a repeating harmonic appeared, one that corresponded exactly to the spin rate of the object. It was broadcasting itself. The discovery spread quietly across encrypted scientific channels. A single phrase was repeated in early internal memos. Intentional modulation unlikely, but cannot be ruled out. Those 7 words marked the specific moment 3I Atlas stopped being just another celestial body and became something far more difficult to categorize. The pattern was not random. It pulsed in ratios, mathematical constants that appear throughout organic and synthetic systems alike. It resembled a Fibonacci sequence, an echo of the golden ratio. The official statement from NASA called it residual electromagnetic interference, resulting from solar wind interactions. But multiple insiders speaking off the record have confirmed that the tracking data does not align with that explanation. the object's new trajectory cuts directly across the plane of Earth's orbit. It is an adjustment that statistically borders on the impossible. And yet, the numbers are clear. 3I Atlas is not being pulled toward us by gravity alone. It is choosing the path. This concept terrifies the agencies that are watching because it means 3I Atlas is no longer passive. It is moving with purpose. This morning, data from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory at NASA confirmed what independent astronomers had already begun whispering online. 3I Atlas is on a revised course that will bring it within 0.03 astronomical units of Earth, which is closer than Venus. In cosmic terms, that is a hair's breadth. And if it maintains this acceleration, the encounter window opens in less than 6 weeks. But the strangest part is not the trajectory. It is the behavior. Over the past few nights, amateur astronomers have reported synchronized light fluctuations, bursts of infrared energy repeating every 9 hours. When mapped in sequence, those pulses form a perfect grid, expanding outward like ripples through the solar wind. One researcher compared it to sonar, as if the object was scanning the space around it, searching. NASA has not released any public footage of these bursts, but leaked frames from an internal JPL analysis show something extraordinary. Faint secondary objects, smaller fragments, are orbiting 3I Atlas like satellites. It is a swarm moving in perfect synchronization, with each fragment reflecting a different wavelength of light. Their alignment is not random, it is geometric. It is not a collision path anymore. It is a rendezvous. The official line remains cautious. No cause for alarm, they say, but the classified memos tell a significantly different story. Internally, agencies are preparing for multiple outcomes, including gravitational interference with near-Earth satellites and electromagnetic disruption of high-orbit systems. Yet, the language between the lines hints at something more psychological. One note, allegedly from the Planetary Defense Coordination Office of NASA, refers to a Phase 3 media containment protocol. Translation: they are not just preparing for the object, they are preparing for our reaction to it. Meanwhile, the most advanced telescopes on Earth, the James Webb, the Vera Rubin Observatory, the Square Kilometer Array, are being tasked to monitor the optical and radio emissions of the object continuously. A team at the Galileo Project at Harvard, led by Avi Loeb, has reportedly detected anomalous polarization signatures consistent with reflective control surfaces. In simpler terms, mirrors, or something functioning like them, are adjusting orientation in response to sunlight. That is not behavior we associate with comets. That is behavior we associate with navigation. And here is where the story fractures. Some scientists believe it is an unprecedented natural phenomenon, a comet made of materials we have never encountered before, perhaps metallic hydrogen or some exotic crystalline structure reacting to solar flux. Others believe it is artificial, not necessarily alien in the sensational sense, but evidence of a technology, maybe ancient, maybe automated, that predates our understanding of the solar system itself. Whatever it is not finished moving. The last update from the Deep Space Network shows a new acceleration vector, slight but deliberate, nudging the course of the object closer still. Its current projection crosses the ecliptic plane just ahead of Earth's position in orbit, meaning that in a matter of weeks, our planet will pass directly through the path 3I Atlas just cleared. Dust, radiation, or something else entirely could be waiting there. And so the question has shifted. It is no longer what 3I Atlas is, but why now? Why this specific moment in our technological evolution? Why appear just as we finally begin to see beyond our own cosmic neighborhood? Some say it is coincidence. Others, like Loeb, suspect timing itself may be part of the message. Because if 3I Atlas is on its way to Earth, maybe it is not coming at us. Maybe it is coming for us. The story broke quietly, almost by accident. A small astronomy YouTube channel in Poland posted a 15-second clip of sky tracking footage that showed what looked like a stationary point of light near the sun. But when overlaid with official NASA ephemerides, it matched the coordinates of 3I Atlas exactly. The object was not moving the way it should. It was holding position. Within hours, the video spread across social media before vanishing from every major platform. Not flagged or copyrighted, just gone. Re-uploads failed. Comments froze mid-thread. And yet somehow the clip still exists in fragments, mirrored across anonymous forums and private cloud archives. Like the universe itself does not want it to disappear completely. When people first saw it, most assumed it was fake. Another AI composite, another digital hoax meant to farm views. But astrophysicists who analyzed the video frame by frame confirmed something unsettling. The data lines matched real solar observatory timestamps. This was not CGI, it was sensor-level footage. Whatever 3I Atlas had done, it had paused, suspended against the backdrop of solar plasma, ignoring every physical force that should have torn it apart. And in that moment of defiance, it left behind something else. A ripple across multiple instruments. A standing wave appeared in the solar magnetic field, expanding outward like a pressure ring. Getty images. OGLAD instruments in orbit around Earth picked it up seconds later. A coordinated magnetic pulse timed to the object's shift. No explosion, no flare, no obvious release of matter, just a field-wide tremor, moving faster than it should, as if space-time itself had hiccuped. That is when the narrative began to change. NASA held its first official press conference on 3I Atlas in weeks. But it was not led by scientists. It was handled by public affairs officers. The language was calm, clinical, and precise. Minor trajectory fluctuation consistent with cometary jet outgassing. No threat to Earth at this time. But as journalists pressed for numbers, none were provided. No velocity, no angle, no time frame, only one short phrase repeated like a script. The situation remained stable, except it was not. Hours later, the data portal for the European Space Agency went offline for scheduled maintenance. The feed from the Japanese JAXA observatory followed soon after. Within a day, the only remaining live data source was a network of independent observatories, amateurs scattered across Arizona, Chile, and Namibia, whose telescopes were still pointed at the object. Their observations painted a different picture. 3I Atlas was brightening again, this time in rhythmic pulses, almost like a heartbeat. Each pulse was synchronized with minute fluctuations in Earth's magnetosphere. It was not random. It was responding. And as scientists tried to model the event, one strange pattern emerged. The pulse intervals matched the Schumann resonance, the natural electromagnetic frequency that oscillates between Earth's surface and the ionosphere. It was as if 3I Atlas had locked onto the planet's heartbeat. Around that time, a NASA insider, anonymous, posting through encrypted channels, began sharing what they described as discarded telemetry. Data packages showing signal strength readings far higher than anything officially released. One line stood out among the pages of code. Phase correlation achieved, harmonic resonance stable. It read less like astronomy, more like engineering, as if someone or something was synchronizing with us. Then came the storm, not in space, but on Earth. 2 nights later, the northern hemisphere was hit by one of the most intense auroral displays in recorded history. Skywatchers as far south as Madrid and California saw the heavens ignite in blood-red arcs, spirals of green and violet bending in unnatural geometries. Unlike normal auroras, these were not random curtains of light. They formed structures, repeating loops, twisting rings, helixes like symbols written across the atmosphere itself. Some compared them to ancient runes, others to mathematical diagrams. But the pattern that repeated most often matched a waveform, the same harmonic frequency detected from 3i Atlas just days earlier. Shutterstock. For hours, the world stood beneath those skies, watching the heavens pulse in rhythm with an object no one could explain. Governments issued no statement. Space agencies went silent. Even the usually chatty astronomers on social media withdrew, their accounts going dormant overnight. Only one post survived, a single line from a researcher in Finland. This is not space weather. It is a transmission medium. Then, at precisely 0317 Universal Time Coordinated, every magnetometer on Earth recorded a global spike, not destructive, but synchronized. For 7.2 seconds, every compass needle on the planet drifted east, then west, before returning to normal. Power grids flickered, but did not fail. Satellites reset their orientation sensors, and in deep space, 3i Atlas dimmed completely. It did not fade gradually. It vanished for almost 48 minutes. It was gone, invisible to every spectrum, every radar, every telescope. Then, just as suddenly, it reappeared, but not where it should have been. Somehow, it had shifted by nearly 0.02 astronomical units, an impossible distance to cover in less than an hour. Scientists struggled to describe it. The math does not fit acceleration. It does not fit propulsion. The only possible term they could agree on was phase displacement, as if the object had simply stepped sideways through space. After that, something strange began happening to radio telescopes on Earth. Their data channels began picking up interference not from space, but from within their own systems, feedback loops that seemed to originate inside the instruments themselves. The signals contained recurring structures, nested waveforms, harmonic sequences, prime number intervals. When researchers plotted the data on frequency graphs, they did not get static. They got geometry. One researcher at the Square Kilometer Array described it as a three-dimensional map of resonance space. But the most haunting part was what appeared at its center, a shape that mirrored Earth's orbital path overlaid with an arc, the precise curve of 3i Atlas's new trajectory. It was as if the signal were trying to show us something, a meeting point. By now, fear had spread far beyond the scientific community. Stock markets dipped, airlines quietly rerouted polar flights, and rumors began circulating that NASA had activated contingency protocols normally reserved for impact scenarios. But insiders insisted this was not about collision, it was about control. If the object could manipulate its position in space, could it also manipulate fields, electromagnetic, gravitational, even neural? Because something else began changing. People's dreams across multiple continents, social media filled with reports of identical visions, strangers describing the same image, a spiral of light hovering over a black ocean, a low hum that seemed to speak without words, a presence that felt both alien and intimately familiar. Psychologists dismissed it as mass suggestion, the human mind projecting fear into shared symbolism. But the timing was impossible to ignore. The dream started within hours of the phase displacement of 3i Atlas, and in laboratories where sensitive magnetometers tracked tiny fluctuations in ambient fields, faint pulses aligned perfectly with the global timestamps of those dreams. The line between physics and consciousness began to blur. At this point, even the skeptics went quiet, because one truth became impossible to deny. 3I Atlas was not simply on its way to Earth. It was interacting, using fields we barely understand to touch the planet before it ever arrived. Whether it meant harm, communication, or something beyond either, no one could say. But the whispers in the deep space community began to circle one phrase: quiet, unsettling, and somehow older than the language itself. It is preparing the resonance. The silence from official channels lasted almost 20 hours. Then, without warning, the public feed for NASA went live. The director of the Planetary Science Division appeared, calm, expressionless. Reading from a prepared statement, he spoke of routine recalibration, of expected optical anomalies during solar transit, and of temporary telemetry inconsistencies. But behind his words, something felt rehearsed. Too perfect, too smooth. Every pause timed, every syllable weighted. It was not a statement meant to inform. It was a statement meant to pacify. Minutes later, independent data analysts discovered something else. During the broadcast, every active feed from the Deep Space Network had quietly switched to encrypted mode. That is not normal. The DSN only goes dark under one condition: emergency synchronization protocols, meaning all major observatories, NASA, ESA, JAXA, ISRO, had been linked under a single command authority. The public saw calm faces and scripted words. But behind the curtain, the agencies had just gone to their highest internal alert level. Whistleblowers describe it now as the blackout. During those hours, a handful of astronomers, those outside the official network, kept watching. Their observations showed that 3I Atlas had not disappeared. It had fragmented. At least 4 smaller objects now accompanied it, moving in precise formation, their relative distances fixed, a tetrahedral pattern spinning in slow rotation, not debris, not chance alignment. It looked deliberate. And at the geometric center of that formation, 3I Atlas itself pulsed once, a blinding flare in the ultraviolet spectrum, invisible to human eyes, but captured by instruments across the world. That pulse triggered something unprecedented. Earth's ionosphere flickered. Communication satellites momentarily dropped out of sync. Ground-based radar systems in multiple countries registered false returns. Reflections with impossible velocity shifts, as if something had just passed through their beams faster than light. The incident lasted seconds, maybe less, but the data remains. Residual distortions etched into the upper atmosphere like a scar. Then came the leak. A single document circulated among astronomers through encrypted email titled Project Sync Preliminary Analysis. No official header, no agency seal, but the formatting matched the internal briefing style of NASA. The document outlined a scenario called resonant infiltration, the idea that certain high-energy cosmic objects could induce synchronized oscillations in planetary magnetic fields, effectively embedding information within them. In simpler terms, a data signal carried not through radio, but through the Earth itself. The final line of the memo was stark. Global coherence event predicted. Possible intentional origin maintained containment. Within hours, the document vanished, but its contents were already archived, mirrored, and analyzed by researchers around the world. One of them was Dr. Avi Loeb. Loeb, who had long been dismissed by some as an idealist, published a brief but explosive commentary on his personal blog. In it, he described a new detection, faint but structured microwave echoes matching the exact frequency of the recent emissions from 3I Atlas. These are not reflections, he wrote. They are phase-locked signals originating within the heliosphere. Something is transmitting back. He did not say what it meant, only that the data implies intelligence, either ours or someone else's. Within hours, the post was removed, replaced with a generic 404 error, but cached versions confirmed every word. It was enough. The story was out. Across social media, 3i Atlas became the most searched term on Earth. Mainstream news outlets covered it cautiously, framing it as an astrophysical curiosity, while science communicators pleaded for patience and data. Yet, even as they spoke, global tracking networks began reporting something chilling. The velocity profile of the object was changing again, but this time not relative to the Sun, relative to us. In orbital mechanics, that is not supposed to happen. A comet does not adjust its motion to track a planet. And yet, 3i Atlas was subtly aligning with Earth's path, compensating for our movement around the Sun. The numbers made no sense. Whatever this object was, it was not drifting anymore. It was steering. In Houston, NASA convened an unscheduled closed-door meeting at the Johnson Space Center. Attendees included top-level scientists, defense analysts, and representatives from multiple intelligence agencies. No transcripts were released, but insiders described the atmosphere as tense, almost surreal. The key agenda: determining whether 3i Atlas represented a navigational intelligence, and if so, what its purpose might be. One participant later summarized it in a single chilling phrase: "We are not tracking an object, we are being tracked by one." That night, a faint structured signal appeared again, this time captured simultaneously by observatories in Australia and South Africa. The signal repeated at regular intervals precisely timed to Earth's rotation. The waveform, when translated into audible sound, produced a deep harmonic tone, hauntingly similar to the background resonance recorded in human neural patterns during deep sleep. When visualized, the structure resembled concentric circles intersected by radial lines, like a radar sweep drawn across the cosmos. Researchers at the Haystack Observatory at MIT attempted to decode the waveform by running it through linguistic pattern recognition software. The output was not a message, but a map. Coordinates plotted across the inner solar system, converging on one location: Earth's orbital intersection 6 weeks from now. The same date already predicted by independent orbital models. It was not coincidence, it was confirmation. Meanwhile, a classified transmission leaked from within the communications hub at NASA. A brief 6-second clip of distorted audio, barely audible through static. At first it sounded like electromagnetic interference, but after digital enhancement, a low, rhythmic pulse became clear, a slow, deliberate pattern that repeated 3 times before fading. A sequence so simple yet so universal, it bypassed every language barrier. 3 pulses, a pause, 3 again, then silence. It was not random. It was structure, deliberate, minimal, precise. And though no agency would confirm it publicly, every insider knew what that sequence meant. In basic binary communication, 3 on, 3 off is a handshake, the simplest possible way to say, "ready to receive." After that night, something shifted in the way the world looked at the sky. People began noticing how quiet everything felt. Flights passed without contrails. Satellites moved slower than they should. Even the auroras, still faintly glowing from the earlier storms, seemed to pulse more gently, almost listening. And yet, through all the fear, a strange calm settled in. Because maybe, just maybe, 3i Atlas wasn't preparing to attack or collide. Maybe it was waiting, observing, aligning itself with something older, deeper, and far more intricate than physics alone could describe. Dr. Loeb posted one final message before going silent entirely. It was not through official channels, not even on his site. It appeared on a small forum for theoretical astrophysics, a single paragraph signed only with his initials. When an unknown system aligns with our orbit, it is not always approaching us. Sometimes it is synchronizing, becoming part of a network too large for us to perceive. The question is not what 3i Atlas wants. The question is what we are about to become. After that, his account was deleted. In the days that followed, every observatory on Earth pointed toward 3i Atlas again. The swarm formation was still there, expanding, rotating, rearranging into new geometric configurations. It was not random drift. It was constructing something. A lattice, a field, maybe a communication array, maybe something even larger. The shape was incomplete, but the intent was clear. This was an architecture, a structure being woven not of matter, but of resonance itself. And as the patterns grew clearer, one realization spread through the scientific community like a cold wind through an empty observatory dome. If it was building something, then it was not alone. The first sign that 3i Atlas was no longer just a distant event came quietly, almost politely. Weather satellites began registering atmospheric fluctuations, small rhythmic density shifts over the Pacific, barely perceptible but perfectly synchronized with the swarm's rotational frequency. They did not resemble any known weather pattern or jet stream disturbance. It was as if the entire upper atmosphere had begun to breathe in time with something far beyond it. At first, scientists blamed calibration errors, instruments glitch, data drifts. But the anomalies did not stop. Within days, meteorological sensors in multiple hemispheres, Europe, Asia, South America, all reported the same strange pattern. A faint, low-frequency oscillation passing through the atmosphere roughly every 6 hours. Each pass coincided with a change in the internal geometry of 3i Atlas, as though the swarm's formation were turning like gears, locking into a larger mechanism we could not yet see. Governments, of course, said nothing, but something in their silence changed. Suddenly, global space agencies stopped releasing orbital data altogether. The NORAD public tracking feeds, once freely available, went offline for maintenance. Even private tracking systems like SpaceTrack began showing blank gaps where 3i Atlas should have been. In its place, only static, as if someone had deleted the sky. Then, an unmarked press leak reached journalists from a European news outlet. A single sentence allegedly from inside the European Space Agency's control room. It is not approaching anymore. It is synchronizing. The phrase spread faster than any official statement could have. Synchronizing. What did that mean? Synchronizing with what? That night, hundreds of amateur astronomers tried to reacquire the object. Most saw nothing. But a handful, those using wide-field infrared lenses, caught something astonishing. Not a single bright body anymore, but multiple faint streaks forming a web-like structure spanning tens of thousands of kilometers. Each line pulsed faintly, like strands of light tightening around an invisible core. The next morning, strange reports began to surface from across the globe. Compass needles swaying without magnetic interference, birds migrating in erratic patterns, radio stations picking up harmonic feedback on unused frequencies, and in certain regions, remote deserts, open seas, and mountain plateaus, travelers reported a low mechanical hum that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. The sound was not constant. It rose and fell like a tide. Those who heard it described it the same way. It felt alive. NASA finally broke the silence, but not to reassure the public. They released a 2-sentence notice. Following the latest solar encounter, 3i Atlas has entered a post-perihelion drift phase. All current data remains within expected physical parameters. Except it had not. The object was not drifting. It was stabilizing. Its acceleration had stopped completely. Not slowing, not decaying, but maintaining a perfect constant relative to Earth's orbital position. A state of motion so exact it suggested active control. Shutterstock Ogledd. That same week, an image leaked from an internal ESA server. It showed the swarm in high resolution captured by the solar orbiter. The formation was not random. It had evolved. The objects now formed a lattice that resembled an antenna, a vast luminous frame with symmetrical arms radiating outward from a central core. Engineers who saw it described one haunting detail. The structure's design was not optimized for transmission outward. It was shaped to receive. Across universities and labs, theories erupted. Some called it a cosmic relay. Others, more quietly, suggested it was something else. A probe waiting for activation, a gateway aligning with something that was not here yet. Then, at precisely 4:02 Universal Time Coordinated, on a cold November night, the world trembled. Every magnetometer from Alaska to Antarctica spiked simultaneously. Instruments registered a global magnetic pulse, silent, invisible, but strong enough to make compasses swing and electronic clocks reset. For 7 minutes, every satellite orbiting Earth recorded bursts of static. The global positioning network failed, then rebooted. In the chaos of data, astronomers captured one thing: a flash from 3I Atlas, bright enough to momentarily outshine Venus. But unlike a normal flare, it was not random radiation. When converted to a spectrogram, it revealed modulation, patterns, a transmission. The pattern was not human, yet it was not alien gibberish either. It followed logic, mathematical progression, recursive harmonics, encoded geometry. Hidden inside it was a perfect logarithmic spiral. The same pattern found in galaxies, hurricanes, and seashells, and beneath it, a signature repeating at regular intervals, a waveform that matched Earth's own resonance frequency. As the data spread through private networks, one scientist described the revelation in a message that would later be deleted. It is mirroring us. Whatever this is, it is building an echo of the planet in real time. By dawn, the implications were clear. 3I Atlas was not simply traveling anymore. It was imprinting something onto the solar system itself. A structure invisible to the naked eye, but resonant across every measurable field, like an invisible twin forming out there in the dark. That is when the first images from the James Webb Space Telescope leaked. They were not supposed to be released for months, but a small team at Goddard posted anonymized data showing a faint distortion field extending millions of kilometers beyond the known boundaries of 3I Atlas. It was not dust. It was not gas. It was space-time distortion, as if gravity itself was being folded into shape. At the same time, radio telescopes in Chile picked up something even stranger. A faint repetition like a cosmic heartbeat timed to the pulse of the swarm's rotation. But every third pulse contained an echo from a different direction. Farther out beyond the heliopause, another signal identical in pattern, delayed by light hours. There was not one 3I Atlas. There were at least two. And whatever they were doing it together. Inside NASA, panic set in quietly. Memos circulated describing coordinated interstellar synchronization events and non-gravitational communication vectors. Translation: the two structures were not sending signals by light or radio. They were modulating the very medium of spacetime to talk faster than physics should allow. Some speculated this was a network, a system spanning light years, using resonance as a bridge. Others whispered a simpler, darker theory, that we were witnessing something that was not building. It was activating. In a closed session of the United Nations Scientific Council, one delegate summarized it bluntly. This is not a visit, it is a handshake. And across the world, ordinary people began to feel it. Not metaphorically, physically. Subtle vertigo during quiet nights, phones flickering with phantom notifications, shortwave radios turning on by themselves. In one documented case, a group of hikers in Iceland claimed the aurora above them pulsed in perfect rhythm with their own heartbeats. None of it should be possible. But then again, none of this ever should have been. By now, the question of what 3I Atlas is has begun to blur. It is no longer a comet or a craft or even an object in the traditional sense. It is behaving more like a phenomenon, one that responds, reflects, and evolves based on its environment. The deeper humanity looks, the more it seems to mirror us, our frequencies, our signals, even our fear. Dr. Loeb's last encrypted note, recovered from a mirrored forum post, offered the simplest and most haunting theory yet. The universe is an information system. 3I Atlas might be its diagnostic. And if that is true, then maybe this is not an arrival at all. Maybe it is an audit. Something out there is measuring us, our electromagnetic signature, our consciousness, our civilization, and adjusting itself accordingly, like a cosmic mirror reflecting not light, but intent. So, as the world stares up at the sky, watching that faint blue point of light shimmer near the sun's path, one thought hangs heavier than all the others. If 3I Atlas is synchronizing with Earth, what happens when the synchronization is complete? For weeks, the hum was background, a faint vibration you could almost mistake for silence. It started as a rumor on social media. People in rural areas claiming they could feel a low-frequency tremor at night, like the air itself was breathing. Most dismissed it. Wind through the power lines, underground machinery. But then the reports multiplied from cities, from mountain towns, from places where there should not have been any noise at all. It was not just sound anymore, it was rhythm. Hospitals began recording irregularities in cardiac monitors, synchronized heartbeats spiking at the exact same second across entire wards. The data did not match environmental interference. It matched the latest timing interval of the rotational pulses of 3I Atlas. That was the first real sign that whatever was happening up there was not staying in space anymore. It was coupling with life. Scientists avoided that word, coupling, but the data left no other explanation. Atmospheric spectrographs showed tiny, almost imperceptible energy fluctuations at ground level. Coherent waves moving through the ionosphere like tides passing through matter as though it were transparent. Normally, such fluctuations would scatter, but these did not. They passed cleanly, as if something in the wave recognized the structure of living systems and adjusted accordingly. One physicist described it in a private call later leaked online. It is like we are part of the signal now. It is reading us and rewriting its output in response. By the time her voice reached the public, the world had already begun to change. Streetlights flickered, not randomly, but in rhythmic cascades. Animals began migrating in concentric patterns, circling invisible centers. Coral in the Pacific began bioluminescing in the same timing sequence as the pulses from 3I Atlas. And from the most unexpected places, power grids, digital clocks, deep-sea hydrophones, came traces of that same repeating sequence. Everything was syncing. The first global coordination effort, quietly dubbed Project Mirror, was launched within the week. Every space-capable nation pulled data under a single encrypted network managed by NASA and the ESA. The goal was simple: monitor 3I Atlas continuously at every possible wavelength until its behavior could be predicted. But prediction was not the problem. The data was consistent. Too consistent. It was as if someone or something was controlling the randomness itself. At 02:14 Universal Time coordinated, on a quiet Thursday morning, an event occurred that would change everything. The entire global magnetosphere shifted. Not enough to cause disaster, but enough to be measurable. It lasted only seconds. When it ended, every magnetic reading across the planet stabilized at a slightly different baseline, higher, smoother, resonant. To the human eye, nothing seemed different. But electronics began behaving strangely. Wireless signals traveled farther, clearer, with less interference. Radio noise dropped to near zero. Even the internet's undersea fiber networks began reporting reduced packet loss, as if the entire electromagnetic environment had been cleaned, tuned. It was as though the planet's frequency had been calibrated. And still, 3i Atlas glowed above the solar plane, silent, watching. When NASA finally released its latest image, a faint long-exposure composite from the James Webb, it took the world by storm. The object, once featureless and distant, now appeared crystalline, multifaceted, refracting light in a pattern eerily similar to human DNA. But at a scale no microscope could contain. Astronomers called it pareidolia, our tendency to see meaning where there is none. But deep down, even they knew this was not coincidence. Dr. Loeb appeared then, not in an interview or an official capacity, but in a leaked recording from a closed astrophysics roundtable. His voice was calm, measured, almost reverent. "We have spent decades listening for a signal from beyond the stars," he said. "But maybe that is not how intelligence communicates. Maybe it does not send messages. Maybe it creates conditions, a mirror, for us to become aware enough to respond." He paused, then added quietly, "I do not think 3i Atlas is approaching Earth. I think Earth is being tuned to meet it halfway." That phrase, "tuned to meet it halfway," spread faster than any official update could. And as soon as it did, the next event arrived. Over the following week, the global frequency baseline continued to climb. Musicians began noticing their instruments slightly detuning, not electronically, but physically. Pitch measurements shifted by a fraction of a percent, identical across every region. Even digital synthesizers drifted in harmony with the new electromagnetic background. When researchers plotted the data, the result was staggering. The shift aligned perfectly with the golden ratio, nature's own mathematics echoing through every device, every atom, every thought. Something or someone was harmonizing the planet. The world adapted in subtle ways. Sleep patterns deepened. Anxiety rates dropped in cities nearest to geomagnetic nodes. People reported lucid dreams filled with spirals of light, voices humming in languages that felt both alien and maternal. And always the same image, a luminous pattern descending through a field of stars, not crashing, not invading, aligning. Governments did not call it contact, but they stopped denying it was happening. Leaked memos described anticipated resonance interaction events. Pilots were instructed to report light anomalies, but not engage. Ground-based telescopes were reclassified as restricted data assets. Even private satellites began returning encrypted telemetry inaccessible to their own operators. Something had changed behind the scenes. Humanity was no longer an observer. It was part of the system. And then the signals came. For years, SETI had scanned the skies for narrow-band transmissions, the universal calling card of intelligence. But the new data from 3i Atlas wasn't narrow at all. It was broadband, diffused, woven through the natural background radiation itself. The universe's static had acquired a pulse. The pulse was not language. It was resonance structured across harmonics like a symphony built from gravity and light. When converted into sound, it produced a melody so hauntingly beautiful that researchers described it as emotion rendered audible. It was not a message to humanity. It was humanity's own electromagnetic reflection now amplified, shaped, and returned. As one researcher whispered during a live recording session, "It is us. It is showing us what we sound like from space." That night, while the world listened, a faint shimmer appeared across the night sky. Not a meteor, not a satellite, a translucent band of light stretching horizon to horizon. No one could explain it. Photographers captured it as a single continuous arc, glowing faintly blue, rippling as if alive. The phenomenon lasted 6 minutes. When it faded, every radio telescope across Earth received one final burst of coherent data. It was short, less than 1 second, but unmistakable. A pattern: 7 pulses, a pause, 7 again. The same signature recorded years earlier when 3I Atlas first entered our solar system. Only now, it was not a transmission from deep space. It was local, originating within Earth's own magnetosphere. Whatever had been up there was now here. At first, the change was subtle enough to dismiss, the kind of thing you could blame on exhaustion, stress, or too much news. People described a mild tingling in the back of the skull, a faint vibration in the bones when the night sky was clear. Sleep felt heavier, dreams more vivid. Then came the shared images. People on opposite sides of the world sketching the same pattern, a spiral of intersecting rings, each radiating from a dark center like the iris of a cosmic eye. Doctors called it coincidence. Psychologists labeled it mass suggestion. But then the EEG data arrived. Hospitals across 3 continents recorded synchronized neural oscillations in patients asleep at the same hour. Brainwaves separated by oceans now moving in unison. The pattern matched the 3I Atlas signal to within a fraction of a hertz. It was not mass hysteria. It was global entrainment. Inside, NASA, the emergency team convened again. Their latest models showed something extraordinary and terrifying. The object's pulses were no longer simply broadcasting. They were coupling with Earth's own magnetic field, forming standing waves that resonated deep within the planet's crust. The effect was not destructive, but it was not inert either. Microseismic sensors began picking up rhythmic tremors perfectly timed to the pulse frequency. The Earth itself was starting to vibrate in harmony. The agency's top geophysicist described it in one sentence that would later leak through an encrypted email chain. If this continues, the planet will no longer behave like a closed system. It will sing. That phrase, "it will sing," spread through every classified network like wildfire. Because if Earth could become resonant enough to amplify the signal, the entire biosphere could turn into a single transmitter, a beacon made of life. The world governments moved fast. Quietly, global military satellites were reprogrammed to monitor the ionosphere. Deep space antennas were reoriented toward the outer solar system. Civil aviation networks were instructed to limit high-altitude frequency interference. But none of it mattered because the process was not happening above us anymore. It was happening inside us. Across populations, heart rhythms and neural signals began showing slight but measurable coherence. People who had never meditated or practiced any form of synchronization described spontaneous calm, a stillness that felt unnatural, like the world's volume had been turned down. Crowds gathered at observatories, temples, rooftops, not in panic, but curiosity, drawn by something they could not name. For the first time in history, billions of humans stood under the same sky at the same hour, listening without knowing why.